Hey everyone, this is Chris here with Daily Motor, and today we've got the infotainment tour and demo on this Ford F-150 Lightning and its 15-inch Sync 4A infotainment system, as well as a quick look at this 12-inch, what Ford calls productivity screen. In other words, the digital cluster here in front of me. But before we get started with the technology in this car, let's take a quick look around the outside just so you can see what we're working with today. A pretty big deal and a pretty revolutionary vehicle in the US market. If you're unfamiliar with the Ford Lightning, this is a completely electric F-150 pickup, and honestly, from the outside, it looks quite similar to just a regular F-150 until you look closely and you see the Lightning badge there on the side, the aerodynamic wheels, and these strip taillight and the strip LED bar that goes across the hood. But along with the electric technology, the massive EV range with this truck, they have some interesting technology inside as well. So let's go ahead and dive into this infotainment system. And actually, before we dive into the infotainment system, let's take a quick glance at this 12-inch digital cluster, what Ford calls their productivity screen. So you've got different buttons here on the steering wheel that can take you through all of your different settings. You can see My View, which right now we just have as a trip computer. You can have the driver assistance screen. You can have the calm screen with nothing. This is quite important, in my opinion, just to have a calm screen when you really don't want to see anything but your speed and your range. And that is all that you see here on the calm screen. And you can see we've got a couple different trip computers. We've got our tire pressure. And then this is how you configure your My View. Otherwise here, you can go through just a couple different screens here with truck info, towing, navigation, can put a destination in here if you'd like to. It just takes you back to the calm screen. All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and leave that on the calm screen. That was just a quick glance here through this. Actually, real quick. To gauge here on the left, that shows you your range as well as the percentage of power that you're putting forth when you step on the accelerator, and then of course your speedometer over here on the right, and two temperature gauges up there for your batteries and your electric motors. Okay, let's move on from the cluster because we are here to talk about this 15-inch vertical infotainment display. This is quite a wild looking display. It's very in your face. It's very striking, I would use the word there. And as you can see, there's no real home screen here. I have my phone paired up for Apple CarPlay, and that becomes your home screen. Whether you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto synced up to your Ford Sync 4A, that sort of takes over this big blank space that would normally be here if you didn't have any projection active. So we'll jump into Apple CarPlay a little bit later, but let's explore some of the different features of this infotainment display before we get into Apple CarPlay. And then I also have an Android phone in here that we'll plug in so you all can get a quick glimpse at Android Auto. So I want to start with the I would call this more the second home screen. It's kind of home base for all of your truck settings, and that is up here in the top left corner. You can see we have the front end of a Lightning pickup there, and if you tap that, it takes you to your vehicle controls. Now, this is the most important screen to get to if you want to switch drive modes, because this is how you do that. You've got normal, sport, off-road, and tow haul, and you can switch those here. You can see I just switched it into sport mode. Get a cool little animation there on the screen. And it's the same for all of the other drive modes. In fact, it changes the whole mood of the screen. You can see when I go into sport, it turns your icons black as opposed to blue. So that's kind of neat. We've also got other controls for the truck over here on the left. You can see we've got our camera views. We've got a BMW there in front of us, and you can see that quite clearly there on the camera. We've also got a BMW there to our right, and you can see that on the 360 camera there at the bottom. Other settings over here, access setting for your locks, towing. You can check those out. You can see trailer light check. If you have a trailer hooked up, it'll go through all of your turn signals, brake lights, all of those things. You can add trailers in here for your Pro Trailer Backup Assist right here next to the steering wheel. Onboard scales, and see how much you have in your payload there. Zone lighting, you can turn the lights on there in the truck. Pro Power on board, this is how you can power your house if you're if the power goes out at your house, you can plug your truck in and it can power your house. So that's pretty cool. But basically here, it's just all of your different truck settings. Now, if you go into settings in the settings menu, these are more things that don't necessarily relate to the truck. So you've got personal profiles, you've got what phone you have paired. You can see that my iPhone is paired right now. You do have some vehicle settings here for ambient lighting and, you know, all of that sort of thing. You've got a big list here. Oh, excuse me. Okay. No idea what I just did. Okay, I just took us to FM radio. Did not mean to do that. But you can see that sometimes this system is a little bit laggy and frustrating. Anyways, though, you can see all of those settings here. Vehicle hotspot, system updates will pop up here in this settings screen. You've got ambient lighting. No ambient lighting color selections, simply ambient lighting just as a whole. It's only one color and it's like a light blue. So you can adjust brightness, but that is just about it. And what you saw me do earlier was unintentional, but as you can see here, you can swipe up and it kind of works like a smartphone in that way, where if you're on the screen, you have this little bar down here that you can swipe up and it'll take you back to your home screen. And as you can see right now, our home screen has become FM radio. So I guess let's take a look through here. You've got this big central volume knob that's mounted on the touchscreen. I don't know of any other infotainment displays other than, of course, the one here in the Lightning, the one in the Expedition, and the one in the Mustang Mach-E that give you this volume knob that is mounted on the screen. It's kind of weird looking, but it works. And as journalists, we always complain about not having volume knobs, so it's cool to see that there is one integrated. Some people don't like it, but you know, I don't mind it at all. So you can see here now we're on FM radio. We can take a look at what AM radio looks like, pretty much the exact same, and then Sirius XM here as well. You can switch through channels here on the touchscreen with this button. As you can see here, you can toggle through, or you can manually put a channel in here with that little touchpad right there. Okay, so other home screen options besides Apple CarPlay, you can see whatever sort of radio or audio source you're listening to can also take up this large part of the screen. You can also minimize this down if you want these sub-screens down here to be bigger. And to go back into Apple CarPlay, you simply press right there. If you want that to be bigger, you press here. Let's move below Apple CarPlay before we get into it and take a look at some of these smaller options down here. You can see these are a lot more just shortcuts that'll take you to different places in the infotainment. A shortcut to Sirius XM. This is a shortcut here to your trip computer. You can see what sort of energy you've used over the course of your trip. Of course, we haven't used any because we've just been sitting here. So those are all at 0%. And then you can also open up your navigation here and you can make that a little bit bigger if you want it to. It's just gray. It really blends into the screen. But as far as this goes, it actually reacts quite quickly. Some of the earlier versions of these big Ford infotainment screens were super laggy and just not very intuitive or nice to use. But now they've kind of worked out some of those bugs. It's not as fast as some other infotainment systems, but it gets the job done. So there's the navigation there for you guys. Take a look at that. And well, that's about it as far as it goes with just the most obvious things here in this infotainment system. We have Amazon Alexa up here. If you sign into Amazon, you're able to use that. You've got a quick access button here for any updates that you may have. And then these buttons up here are just more shortcuts. You have a lot of shortcuts in here. There's a lot of different ways that you can do things. But the only option in here that you don't get anywhere else is the Games tab. And you can see that you have some games in here in this infotainment system. You also have a sketch pad if you want to do some drawing. I always screw up the Daily Motor logo because I still don't know what it looks like somehow, but you can see you can do some sketching in here. And if you have some kids, if you're sitting in a parking lot, it's quite nice to have the option, and you can even save sketches. Let's see. Oh, no one has saved anything in here. Okay. So let's go back home. If I can figure out how to go back home, let's go to Apple CarPlay and we'll take a look at that. Actually, quick, let's take a look. Oh, we already did this. Never mind. Okay, let's go back to Apple CarPlay and we'll take a quick look at that just to see what it looks like and give you all a view of it. This is what most people, I assume, are going to be using here is phone projection, and it does look very good. I was nervous because the old infotainment system in the Ford Explorer, in fact, it's probably still in it, the vertical screen in the Explorer, it's such a small Apple CarPlay display, and you can actually have it two ways in here, of course. You can make it just a little bit bigger, make it full screen, and they've integrated this in a very attractive way, in my opinion. Of course, we don't have the wide screen because this is a vertical screen, so it's just 4 apps across, 2 apps down. But it reacts very quickly. I haven't really had it lag here in Apple CarPlay. Let's take a look here into Spotify. You guys can see what that looks like. And what else should we look at? How about charge point? That's pretty important if you're in an electric vehicle. So there is charge point. It'll take a minute to load up, but anyways. And then let's also take a look at Google Maps here. See how fast that reacts. Pretty good, okay. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and go now into Android Auto and see what that looks like here on our 15-inch Ford Sync 4A. All right, connecting now to Android Auto, I just lined in. We do have wireless Android Auto here on this F-150 Lightning, but today we have it plugged in. It'll look the same either way. You can see, I've been noticing lately, Android Auto is kind of low quality on these infotainment displays, while Apple CarPlay gives you that full, crispy, almost like 4K view, whereas this looks more 1080 or 720. But anyways, let's continue here into Android Auto. Now keep in mind, this is an inactive Android phone that I'm using, because of course I don't have 2 active phones, so there are some things that don't work. Google Maps is inactive here on this Android phone. We can go back here to home and you can see how things work. I don't love the way that Android Auto looks just in general, but if you have an Android phone, here is how it looks. Google Maps obviously is not going to work for us right now. Here's YouTube Music. They still react pretty quick. I wouldn't say it reacts quite as fast as Apple CarPlay, but it still reacts in a fine enough way to where it's not irritating. There's not like an irritating amount of lag. But there you go. There's Android Auto. I showed you Apple CarPlay. Now let's move to the last portion of this infotainment system, and admittedly my least favorite part. So, of course, if you haven't already noticed, all of our climate controls are down at the bottom of this infotainment display. And if you want to adjust any part of your climate, any part of heated seats, heated steering wheel, it's all in the screen. You can see my heated steering wheel button is actually quite an easy one. It's simple on and off. But if you want to adjust heated or cooled seats, you have to click the seat button here, and you can drag either up for heated or down for cooled, and you tap the middle there for off, and that is your seat menu. Fan speed, same sort of thing. Drag up for high fan speed there on 7. Drag all the way down at the bottom for off or 1. You can also just click auto. You have an auto button right here. You can set a temperature, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. If you want to adjust your temperature, it's here. Same sort of sliding thing, hot to cold. I kind of like how they mix that here in the middle, and it's purple. I think that's kind of neat. Can switch here where your air is blowing, kind of like a Tesla. And then you have defrost down here as well. But that is just about it here for this 15-inch Ford Sync 4A system. I hope you all have enjoyed. I hope you found this somewhat helpful. It's kind of a very jumbled together infotainment system. It works better than they used to, but it's still a little bit busy for me. I find myself getting a little overwhelmed with this infotainment system. But the saving grace here is that they've really fixed a lot of the lag that this system used to have. It still has a little bit when you're in the Ford system. You can see it's not perfect. It does lag slightly, but it's so much better that I'm just really happy with all of the changes that they've made here for Sync 4A. So thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below any ideas that you have for these infotainment videos. As I say every time, we've only done a few of these and they're still pretty new to the channel. I'd like to come up with some sort of format to just kind of make these a little bit more cohesive and make them make more sense. But hopefully you've found some helpful information here with this Sync 4A infotainment system, as well as the 12-inch productivity screen here, aka the digital cluster. So thank you all so much for watching. That's going to wrap it up for us today. This has been Chris here with Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.